Hey YouTube, what's going on? Today you turned into the straight SRT8 channel. We're going to discuss cold air intakes versus SRIs, which are short ram intakes, and talk about those advertised horsepower gains from the manufacturers. I also want to discuss the horsepower stack-ups. So if you have a, say, 20 horsepower gain from an air filter and say 10 from a throttle body, are you truly going to see an extra 30 horsepower from that stack-up? Maybe, maybe not. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so today we're talking about different mods for your engine, cold air intakes. Maybe you got a ported throttle body right here. Maybe you're going to relocate your IAT sensor. Maybe you'll have a ported intake manifold. So we're going to discuss how much horsepower each one of these mods adds, how much true horsepower it adds, and then your stack ups for doing two mods together. Say you do it in cold air intake and you do a ported throttle body. Are you really going to get what both these mods claim to be as their true horsepower gains when you add them together? We're also talking about heat soaking, what heat soaking is, how to help eliminate heat soak, and what a true cold air intake is versus a SRI. So a cold air intake stands for, it's a CAI. It's going to pull in true cold or ambient air. So a lot of times you're going to have a metal housing right here, and then your filter's going to go way down into the car. And for the Jeeps, B. Woody makes a cold air intake for us, a true cold air intake. And the filter housing's right back here. So you're going to pull in ambient air from down here, pull it up through a metal tube, bend it over, and go right into your throttle body. A lot of other manufacturers offer SRIs, or short ram intakes, and they may call it a cold air intake, but it's really not if you think about it. So cold air intake, again, pulls in true ambient air from down here, pulls it up, brings it into the engine, and SRIs, and they pull in engine air from right about here. Most SRIs have a little bit of a heat shield, which comes from over here, kind of extends down and goes over here and separates the air housing from the rest of the engine bay. It helps eliminate some heat soaking, but in reality you're still pulling in relatively hot air from inside your engine bay, whereas a true CAI, or cold air intake, is going to pull in ambient air. It's going to be much cooler, and it's going to pass through into your engine. Now when we talk about CAIs and cold air intakes, you got to keep a couple things in mind. A lot of cold air intakes are made out of metal. So as your engine gets really hot, you're going to warm up this metal pipe right here, and then of course you're going to affect your intake air temperature sensor, which means your super cold air, which is ambient air, by the time it gets to your engine, it's going to warm up, get to your IAT, which is already hot from being heat soaked, and that's really going to change your air to fuel ratio and may retard your timing because of knock. So while it gives you some benefits, you also got to keep in mind that it's going to warm up. It won't be as cold as ambient. So whenever you're looking at your dash, monitoring your IAT temperatures, they won't be exactly ambient. Another issue, of course, for that is heat soaking due to the sensor itself. So a lot of guys are relocating this IAT sensor over to right here instead. What that's going to do is keep the sensor further away from the engine. It's going to reduce the heat soaking, and it's going to give it more true and correct air to fuel ratios and actual temperatures. Now, why does that matter? So when you're racing at wide open throttle, it doesn't matter if your sensor is here or your sensor is here. No matter what, at wide open throttle, you're pushing so much air through here that the air is minimally affected by the heat soak. However, when you're just cruising around town, you're at a stoplight, you're going to see much hotter temperatures come out of here versus coming over here. It takes much longer to cool down because you're not drawing in a whole lot of air driving it around the city. So you're going to get hotter and false readings of your location being here versus your location being here. Alright, so we discussed horsepower increases, SRI versus CAI, and what they mean. Now let's talk about the manufacturer's advertised horsepower increases. So some manufacturers are going to show you that you're going to get maybe let's say plus 20 horsepower off of a cold air intake. Are those numbers truly real? Probably not for our applications, and this is why. When they're on a dyno and they have their cold air intake set right here, they have a blower up front pushing cold air into the engine, and they have the hood open like I'm showing right now. So when you're revving this engine up very high, you're going to pull in a lot of air from ambient and suck it right in over your fender, right into your intake, your air intake going into your engine. In real applications, you won't be driving around with your hood open, of course. You're going to have your hood closed. So even though the Jeeps have these active hood vents, and they really do work, they pull out a lot of hot air, unfortunately they're not very big, and so you're still going to get a whole lot of heat soak going on, because right here you have a heat generator. And all this heat's going to get from your engine, it's going to pass over to your air intake, and it's going to give you much hotter temperatures. You combine that with the stock location for the IAT, and now all of a sudden you're pulling in much hotter air than you would be if you had your hood open and didn't have a hood at all. So while those horsepower numbers are correct for doing what they're doing, you're not actually going to see those horsepower numbers on your engine when you're driving around or racing your vehicle, of course, with your hood down. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that if you had a cold engine and you had no heat soak, and you had just turned the car on and you wanted to race it, yes, you'd be pulling in the numbers they're showing because you wouldn't have any heat soak. It would be much cooler. However, that is very bad for the engine. You do not want to have your oil temperature being very low. You want it to be higher, you want it to be more viscous, you want to get your oil in all the nooks and crannies of the engine and make sure it's properly lubricated and that's not from a cold start. Alright guys, that about does it for this episode of Straight SRT8. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification so you can get my notifications as soon as I post a new video. If you like this kind of content, talking about SRIs versus CAIs, talking about horsepower differences, talking about mods to an engine, talking about how to increase your performance, then this is definitely the channel for you. I have a ton of content coming. I just spent quite a bit of money on mods for this. I bought a new tuner from Diablo Sport, have a new thermostat going in, and then the IAT sensor relocation, along with the other mods I already have in the engine right now. I have a solar performance exhaust, ported throttle body, and then I changed out the stock intake or the stock air filter for a AEM high flow air filter. So in next episodes, I'm going to explain why I did those mods, how much horsepower I actually gained, and how it affected my 0 to 60 times. So please stick around and look out for the next episode. Thanks guys.